Jewelry brands like Pandora are preaching that they care about the environment and treating employees right. In 2021, Pandora has sold more than 102 million pieces of jewelry, which creates lots of CO2 emissions. Let's find out if Pandora actually does care about the environment and treating their employees right. Now, when it comes to environmental efforts, right, Pandora has set that they want to become net zero by 2040. Net zero refers to a state in which the greenhouse gases, so the CO2 emissions going into the atmosphere, is being balanced out how much you take out from the atmosphere. Other organizations are trying to achieve this by 2050. What has Pandora done, for example, right now already? They have, for example, created a new role at their vice president level for something called a Chief Sustainability Officer, which is a good sign because that person is dedicatedly looking at sustainability across the Pandora business worldwide. In addition to that, they have created a 53-page long sustainability report, which is quite in-depth compared to other reports that I've seen elsewhere. They have also announced that by 2025, they want to become carbon neutral around their facilities. So that requires them to reduce 90% of their emissions, which they have calculated in 2019. So looking at, for example, the fuels that they use to craft the jewelry, right? But also the fuel that is used to ship employees from one place to another using trams, for example, in Thailand, where the manufacturing plants are, but also the distribution centers and the crafting facilities, right? Or all the Pandora-owned stores. And if you look at this graph, for example, I want you to look at specifically what they've done so far, right? So in 2019, just looking at the jewelry, the production lines, right, at the facilities, right, they have reduced it to 2021 by almost 100 million tons per CO2 emissions, right, which is indicating that they're trying to take this serious. They have announced that they're building a facility in Vietnam, which is planned to be running 100% on renewable energy. What they're also doing is they're buying so-called renewable energy certificates. What that means is, in simple terms, it's a way to decide where Pandora buys their energy from. So do they buy their energy from an energy supplier such as, who uses fossil fuels, so Pandora can use that to produce the jewelry, or are they buying the energy from somewhere where they have a supplier which uses solar energy? In 2019, they reduced the 49,000 million tons of CO2 that they're emitting into the atmosphere by buying these energy credits, which means they bought energy from a provider which is green, more sustainable, which helps them reduce their amount of CO2 emissions going into the atmosphere. They're also planning to use 100% recycled gold and silver for their jewelry production by 2025. They also decided, and this has been making quite a lot of waves in the media, that they're only going to be using man-made diamonds from now on, which means they're no longer using naturally sourced diamonds, which typically results in rather unethical labor practices. And it's also horrible for the environment, obviously, right? So they rather use laboratories to create these man-made diamonds, which is also not the best, but it's definitely more sustainable than digging up the ground in that regard. What do you think though? Would you buy, for example, a lab-grown diamond? I know this is a touchy subject, but let me know in the comments below, please. The crazy thing, all the things that I've just mentioned, right, only contributes to 8% of how much Pandora spends or creates overall in CO2 emissions as an organization. The rest of the 92% is buying materials, media and marketing, and distribution of the jewelry, for example, as well, right? And other stuff, right? The biggest part of this is ensuring that the suppliers or the organizations where Pandora buys their raw materials, so the gold, the silver and such, is also environmentally friendly. So because Pandora, they're being measured upon finally at the product. If the organization that they bought their gold and silver from, for example, isn't sustainable as well, it will be added to their CO2 emissions count. Pandora has created a so-called supplier engagement program, which in theory should help these highest emission suppliers to fix their sustainability challenges. Now, if you thought this video was super helpful, please leave a like. Now, the next thing is philanthropy, right? What that means is how well does Pandora give back to the community in that regard? And Pandora has a number of notable partnerships, right? What I wanted to showcase or talk to you about is they have, for example, in Thailand, they run a My School project. What that means is for the past 16 years, they have built, refurbished and provided materials, educational materials to primary school in that area. And the schools are being picked by their employees in Thailand. Another thing that they're doing is the so-called Charms for Change movement that they've done in 2021. Now, that was a limited edition charm, and $15 of when you purchased that charm went to UNICEF. They have so far donated $6.2 million to UNICEF, which has contributed to UNICEF reaching roughly 17 million boys and girls. Gonna leave it there. But I think they could do more charms such as this in maybe different areas. So one for animal treatments, one for taking care of the ocean or the environment. Again, that's a personal opinion here. The next item that Pandora has done in light of the invasion of Russia to the Ukraine is Pandora has cut their ties, their association with the Responsible Jewelry Council. Pandora urged the RJC, the Responsible Jewelry Council, to suspend their business with Russia. They haven't done so. So after 12 years of association with that organization, Pandora has said, we're out of there, we're no longer doing business with them, and we're no longer being associated with the Responsible Jewelry Council. The next item is the ethical labor piece, right? If you have worked there, please let me know what you felt and how it feels for you to work at Pandora. Would be super interesting to know in the comments as well. What they have already done, they've created a so-called whistleblower hotline. In 2021, for example, they had 71 cases raised through that hotline, which mainly focused on, store staff involved in reports of potential harassment, for example, unfair treatment, these sorts of things. But the reason for this, why it's interesting, is if you work in that environment and you only can escalate things that something goes wrong to your manager, who might be the person, who is treating you badly, then that instance can give you just a level of security that you can have a voice, that you can do something about it, which is, if that works, the employee not getting any repercussions, that's really cool. That is all part of Pandora trying to create a more inclusive workplace, but also trying to increase the share of underrepresented groups at the moment as well. The next thing Pandora is doing is they're trying to fill the gap in terms of the gender parity among the leadership. Now, if you look at the current ratio of Pandora in terms of the employees, male versus female, right? Pandora is, frankly speaking, mainly a female-run organization, which is, given the nature of the product, not surprising. There's a graph here which shows the 2021 distribution of female versus male participants, right? You have in a global office, for example, 66% of females versus 34% of males. And then if you look at total retail, right? So the shops, the Pandora stores, where you find your Pandora jewelry and you buy it from, that has usually 95% female staff versus 5% males. And again, it comes down to the nature of the business. It does make sense. However, what doesn't make sense is the distribution when it comes to the executive leadership team. Now here they have 12.5% females and 87.5% males. Similar ratio, not as bad, is when it comes to leadership teams, so vice presidents and above, including the board of directors, right? 23% females, 77% males. This is what they're trying to fix as well over the next couple of years. To be fair, you have to remember Pandora is one of the largest jewelry brands in existence. They craft more jewelry than any other brand in the world and sell it in more than 100 countries. How do you feel about Pandora Jewelry now? Please let me know and let's discuss in the comments below.